Alright guys, TacticalRab and say, I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Major 2 in Miami is coming up very shortly, but there's a good argument to be made that certain teams need to make roster changes before we even get to the event. The Minnesota Rocker, after starting 0-4 back in Stage 1, and now 0-5 in their Major 2 qualifiers with still only 5 series victories on the year. One player in particular has been catching lots of criticism over the last few days for his playstyle. Should a roster change be made ASAP before they even get to the Major? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty that we have to dive into today. Firstly, I wanted to mention here from FaZe, we know all the rumours behind the scenes, well not really rumours, now been locked in, right, that Banks and the old guard of FaZe are coming back in some respects. Whether that is actually going to make a tangible difference in the long term of this organisation, I guess we'll see. I think it should be a positive thing in general. I guess there's also questions as to, especially post-CDL, or whatever comes next year or the year after in the COD League, what that means for FaZe, because you know, FaZe are operated by Atlanta Esports Ventures and they license out the naming rights effectively. That may change under FaZe Clan in the near future, so I guess we'll see. And even as Attach says, this just feels right, and Clay goes reunion incoming. Running it back as content creators, though, says Attach. So, you know, who knows? Obviously, like, let's be realistic here. They're not probably going to run it back on FaZe as players, right? So I think they probably both know that, but doesn't necessarily mean they couldn't still play for some time. I know that Clay he's quite often talking about his future as a player. I think obviously when the Black Ops 2 remastered 2025 potential game came out, Clay was like, oh yeah, I'll be there, like I ain't going away anytime soon. And then he obviously talks about a lot of the rookies that he's seen and has, you know, bright futures potentially ahead of them. So I'm hoping that that does mean that Clay isn't going to step away anytime soon. And he does, I don't know, it feels to me that Clay's enjoying his play more this year than it has been for a little while. So hopefully that continues. Not like Ravens are great, we'll discuss them in a second, but I guess on the Ravens I do want to mention that they made the, I wouldn't say the surprise decision, but they made the decision nonetheless to drop GodRx before they went to the Major, right? They could have stuck it out with GodRx, they could have seen what happens when he got to LAN, they didn't, they brought in Fellow, of course TacticalRab was there as well because they couldn't get Real to the Major and all this type of stuff happens, and guess what, they played really well at the Major. Yes, they only got top 8, and I'm sure in hindsight they'll feel like they should have done better than that because, you know, they could have theoretically got top 4 or top 6 that event the way that they were playing at that event, I thought. They obviously beat the Subliners, knocking them out of the tournament. They really should have beaten Surge, I think, but Illy just made an absolute ridiculous play on that invasion hardpoint to win the game 4, and then they couldn't win a Surge to save their lives. But if they'd have won that, I mean, you know, there were Gorillas left, there was Minnesota Rocker left in these teams. And if they'd have won that, sure, they probably go down to OpTic in the next round because that's who Surge eventually got defeated by, I'm pretty sure. But, you know, who knows? They maybe in some universe they ended up on the other side of the bracket and they played Gorillas or something, and maybe they could have even made further of a run. So I think Ravens, in hindsight, made a good decision there. They made a roster change going into the Major, and it worked out for them. They turned up to LAN with a bit of practice for them under their belt, and I think they played well. Would they have played as well with GodRx? Maybe, but it's kind of difficult to say. But it shows, I think, to some degree, that you can make a change going into an event, given a few days of practice, and it still worked. Sure, Ravens S&D was pretty woeful, probably because they don't have much practice time in that game mode, which is maybe understandable, but maybe other teams need to look similarly at the way that they've done it recently. So, of course, Attach is also thinking about what happens in the future as well, but, you know, he himself seems to be having a good time on Vegas right now, and you can't blame him at all with the way that they are presently playing. Of course, they slammed Boston Reach the other day in a quick 3-0, and there's no doubt that Boston are not in the spot as a roster that they need to be in going forward. I think that that's also one of the series that you can't really afford to get 3-0'd by Vegas. Vegas are probably pretty good right now, and, you know, they're arguably a top 6 team in the league. I think they probably are, based on the evidence and the amount of teams that you can very commendably put below them based on the way that the matches have gone in recent times. They actually feel like a team as well, more so than some of these other rosters that we are seeing formed. But for Boston, you know, they're trying to be top 4 minimum, right? Like, they're paying some big money for these guys. The intention was, when they formed this roster, to be, you know, of all the teams outside of the top 4, they were the one that had the potential to win or to upset these top teams or to make it to a grand finals or whatever. And in part, maybe there's still some truth to that, but it doesn't really feel that way at the moment. And if you want to try and mix it up with the New Yorks, the OpTics, the FaZes, the Torontos of this world, you can't afford to get 3-0'd by Vegas, right? Like, that's a very clear indication that that team is nowhere near where it needs to be. And it's not like it gets massively easier for them. They play OpTic, they play FaZe this upcoming weekend, Boston. That's going to be tough. And as Boston say, they're actually going to do a watch party here for their FaZe match, which is going to be really cool stuff. And hopefully it works out well for all those that attend, and obviously for the team, because, you know, I never like to see these IRL watch parties the team gets slammed in, but, you know, let's be honest, they've got to bring the energy here, right, because that is going to be far from an easy series against the Atlanta FaZe. Now, before we get into what the flank had to say on Awakening and the Minnesota Rocker, I wanted to share what ZooMaa had to say actually on the flank in general, because every so often, you know, criticism goes around about the state of the flank and, oh, they need to change this, they need to change that, like Ben's got to go, X has got to go, or whatever the case is, right? And ZooMaa just gives his thoughts, and I thought it was a pretty interesting explanation from his side on how he perceives some of the criticism around the show. I also do think that he takes it seriously, though. Like, I think that often you will see that when criticism starts to get leveled against the flank, ZooMaa maybe they'll have conversations, they'll say, okay, maybe we should calm down the X versus Ben ramblings like all the time, and maybe that sometimes happens, maybe it doesn't, I don't really know. Personally, I still massively enjoy the show, it's still great for the scene, but ZooMaa's opinion is that the show today is significantly better than it's ever been, and if you prefer the show as it previously was, then that's all just rose-tinted glasses on nostalgia.
See, bro, like, bro, all just to summarize it, I'm going to summarize my rant. Sorry if I'm ranting and yapping. Sorry if I'm yapping and I'm ranting right now, but I got to get this off my chest. I got to get this off my chest, bro. Once upon a time, Call of Duty was dead and there was no content. Okay? There was no content, especially consistent content every day. Every single day. Every single day. The community starts bitching. Nobody does this. There's no content. No, blah, blah, blah. When we first started the show, bro, we have elevated to the show so much more than what it used to be. But people just say, I miss the Cold War days, this and that. Because they miss the nostalgia. They miss the feeling of having nothing and then out of nowhere getting something. If you go back and watch an old episode of The Flank and think that it's not better now than what it used to be, bro, then I don't know what to tell you, bro. I don't know what to tell you. And granted, guys, we get hindered on a lot of stuff, bro. Whether it's being able to watch certain things, being able to watch VOD or do certain things, skim through the VOD. We can't even skim through VOD anymore. You know what I mean? We can't even do that shit anymore. You know what I mean? All I'm saying is, why do people complain so much, bro? Bro, if you like it, watch it. If you don't like it, don't watch it. That's it. You know what I'm saying? It's all it comes down to. That's all it really comes down to, guys. It's all it really comes down to.
So I still do think the show is great personally. And honestly, when Octane joined as like another co-host, I was like, damn, another co-host, is that really going to work? But I think Octane has been the best addition really in some time to the watch party and to the flank. I think he's absolutely great on that show. I still will say that when I listen to the flank, it's almost always I listen to it the next morning on 2x speed, because I can listen to it faster, but also because listening to Eggs versus Ben go at it in regular speed, I can't handle that personally. It has to be 2 times to get through it efficiently, and that's just how it is as far as I'm concerned. And also, they did an episode, was it last weekend, when Doug was on the show, and they had Slash on as a special guest, and I think they had like Scrappy came on for a little bit as well. That was a banger show, one of the best shows in a long time, and to me it's because it had the energy of not exactly what the flank used to be, but I don't buy the idea personally that it's all nostalgia, why people look back at the old episodes with some more fondness, and I think maybe that is part of it, that people look back at Cold War's flanks and they say, wow, like, you know, it was such a cool time for the content space because it was just growing. But I do think back then, the fact that every show was pretty much a ZooMaa Ben, and then guests would come on all the time, there were all sorts of different pros coming on to give their piece, like, those are the shows that I miss the most, and I feel like occasionally they'll do a show like that, and you'll get a bit of a glimpse of that. And it's not always possible or easy to get all the guests on everything like this, but, you know, I just thought it was interesting to see the perception of the community, but, you know, the show's still great fun to watch. And X, of course, was giving his opinion very much so on the Minnesota Rocker as it presently stands, and the changes they might need to make ASAP.
Bro, I'm just going to say it. Drop Awakening now.
This was the dagger series for me.
What are we waiting for? It's a consistent factor. This team would just get better. Do you not want to get better?
Yo, Slay, can you give Lamar some gas today, Slay? Can you give some... Slay, he was doing his thing, Slay.
Lamar was fucking firm.
Come on, Pat.
Bro.
He's been good for these guys,
He
man.
was.
He's been
He has
good.
a
And
fractured
I know you
pinky,
were
bro.
in there today watching it with us, so I know you were in there watching it.
Lamar played definitely above. Whoa, definitely above the average for Lamar. So he played good today. It was above average for him. But again, I still feel like Lamar shouldn't have to do this much on this team. I feel like he's having to overcompensate because where is his AR duo? Like, I'm sorry, but this Awakening guy got nothing against him. It's just consistently every series, 1 map, 2 maps, just a stinker, bro. You cannot have that. And for me, I'm in the Rocker camp. Like, I see potential in the team that I currently have, and I'm instantly wanting to improve this roster. Like, I'm doing it now. I'm doing it ASAP because this team does have a chance, right? Like, they have a chance to be 5th, 6th, like, easily with a roster change. So for me, I don't know what they're waiting for. I'm kind of mind blown by it. I don't see the reason in going to the major, not having well or not doing well or doing average and then making a change. Just do it now. You know you'll improve.
So knowing the Minnesota Rocket and the way that they operate, I don't expect them to make a roster change now. They are 0-5. They did make a bit of a comeback run. Like, let's be honest, they started the year 0-4. They looked pretty shambolic. Then they won 3 in a row. Then they got top 4 at the major. But they're back online and they're back to getting slammed again. And, losing to Thieves, sure, I think Thieves are making progress. I was quite impressed with them this series. But the way that Rocker have lost, I also think that of all the ways for Rocker to lose, this might just be the most demoralizing again. Like, when they lost that control to OpTic, that was the start of the downhill spiral, at least part of it. And the amount of Game 5s that they've now lost in recent weeks is basically criminal. I mean, if we have a look at the standings here, actually, the CDL standings, I guess we can just have a quick look at. They are, I mean, look, they're still sitting 5th somehow, because the teams below them just aren't very good right now. But obviously, this stage, they're down at 0-5. They do have 8 map wins, to be fair, so like they haven't been getting completely torched, although they did by FaZe the other day. They have more map wins than Miami, for example, despite the fact that, they're both 0-5 right now, which isn't exactly pretty. But the way that they lost that series, right, okay, they got beaten by OpTic in that ridiculous reverse sweep, but in their head, going into this one, they're obviously thinking about the fact that, well, we can't seem to win a Game 5 to save our life, it's not looking good. They go down 2-0, and then they bring it back. They win the invasion control. They win the Skid Row hardpoint. They're probably thinking, oh, here we go. Like, this is the chance. Get the reverse sweep in. Get the confidence back. Win a Game 5. Take down Thieves. And then we're going to be back. And then they lose the Game 5. And it's like every single piece of momentum that Rocker could have possibly put together after this, which would have been a struggle anyway, they've lost that momentum emphatically. And again, look at the series. Lint has a big bounce back from when he played against FaZe. He had a shocker there. He turned up here. Accuracy had one of the best series you'd expect. I mean, Accuracy had 85 kills. Awakening had 65. Like, what is going on? This guy was brought in to do the slaying for this team, and there is no slaying arriving. And I don't really know if that's just a playstyle thing in this specific game, whether it doesn't work with Accuracy for whatever reason, but Accuracy's been playing really well, and Awakening hasn't, and you just can't seem to get both of them working at the same time. I think Awakening as well, when you watch him play, some maps he's playing well, and he's there, and some maps he just goes completely missing. Obviously, there's been the talk about the lack of sound EQ, the fact that snaking is no longer a thing. Maybe these other cheesy mechanics have been GA'd or removed from the game, and now it's more difficult for the crazy awareness that Awakening's had for the last few years to really shine through. And of course, that's been the debate, right? That, Awakening seems more lost on the map now than he has done previously over the last couple of years, and you can speculate as to why. I mean, Search and Destroy, for example, have a look at this. Lint has a 1.14 in Search. Wake has a 0.72 this year in Search. I also don't really know why he's planting a lot of bombs. Okay, fair enough. Maybe they want to switch it up between Vivid and Wake, and maybe you might say, well, if Wake can't buy a kill in Search, then at least get him to plant the bomb, and maybe that's justified. But yeah, I feel like it's interesting that Wake has been, and to be fair, I think in terms of hill time, Wake has the most on the team. We can actually see it here, right? Objective for 10 minutes. Wake has the more hill time than Accuracy does, which is maybe somewhat surprising, but I don't think it excuses the fact that Awakening's performances have just been pretty poor. He does have a 1 flat in the control, to be fair, but again, you know, the talk has been that Awakening is pretty good at control because you know where they're going to spawn, you set up on a head glitch and you get the kills. Awakening's good at doing that, but for whatever reason, in the rest of this game, it's just not working as it presently stands. So the question is, what do you do? I think Vivid and Linz have proven to be a good SMG duo. Accuracy has been incredibly impressive, I would say. And I said to him very early on this season, if it doesn't work out with Wake, you've got to consider an option there to change him out. And I think they're now probably at that point. The point is, what do you do? If you could get Illy, I think you would do it. But the reality is, you probably can't, because we don't know what's going on behind the scenes there, but that ain't going to happen as far as we understand it. What other options are out there from an AR perspective? There's a guy like Lunas. You could definitely look at him from challenges. There's other players in challenges. Gunless, Temp, among others. You know, I think Cammy as well is worth keeping an eye on, because the way that Boston are currently tracking, I wouldn't be surprised if they considered bringing Cammy into that team. So, you know, maybe if Rocker could get ahead of the curve there, but it's not like Cammy was especially impressive this year either. But Cammy did say the other day on stream that he feels much more comfortable when he's playing with like a traditional main AR, kind of like an Insight, shall we say, when he was dominating with him back in, you know, Cold War Cammy when he was a thing. He said that with Ghosty wasn't quite the same dynamic. Maybe that could work with accuracy better. It's something to consider, but it's not like there's a clear option out there that you make for Awakening, which is possibly why they'll say, you know what, let's just see what happens from now until the major. And they do have 2 series they really should be getting the victories in. They play Surge next, and then they play the Miami Heretics. So, you know, on paper, they probably should be closing out the stage 2 and 5 with a bit of optimism going into the event itself. But even then, it's kind of difficult to say, because they've clearly fallen off pretty big time. And this series, like these series, become rather difficult to call now. And as I said earlier with Ravens, they made a change before the event and it actually worked. The idea that Rocker could have a couple of weeks here to do so, to get comfortable with a new player, might be beneficial. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.